A widow finds an elderly woman collapsed in the rain on the side of the road, but what she discovers afterward changes everything. Leave a comment telling me what you thought of this story. Give it a rating from 0 to 10, and let me know what city you're watching from. I'd love to know if you enjoyed my story and get to know you better. So subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on you. It's almost midnight when I pull my car onto the red clay road that cuts through the open grasslands between Millbrook and the farm where I was born. The rare frost of that August night freezes the dry grass along the roadside and leaves the air smelling like wet stone. I'd only gone out to pick up medicine from the pharmacy at the gas station 20 miles away, but my headlights cut through the dark and land on something strange in the middle of the road. A white-haired woman lying completely flat in the red mud, without any movement. I get out of the car. Every instinct tells me to get back in, but my feet won't listen. The woman is alive. Her breathing is shallow and icy, her lips nearly blue. She's wearing a soaked dark dress, no shoes, no coat, as if she'd been left there on purpose. I lift her in my arms with the strength I learned to carry after I found myself alone in the world, and I bring her inside the only place that is still mine, the small brick house that Harold built with his own 2 hands, and that, at 53 years old, is all I have left of myself. This is where a story begins, one that will last 3 weeks and dismantle my life piece by piece before rebuilding it in a way I never imagined possible. The elderly woman wakes 2 days later on a morning of thin fog that covers the open fields like a damp sheet. She says her name is Eleanor. She says little more than that. She accepts the chicken and potato soup I prepare, watches every corner of the house with small, quiet eyes, and when I ask where she came from, she smiles sideways and changes the subject. I decide that Eleanor needs rest, and that questions can wait. I've learned to carry secrets in silence myself. I became a widow 18 months ago, and I still don't fully understand how Harold, a healthy 57-year-old man, was taken so quickly by a disease the doctors explained with big, cold words. The farm was sold to pay debts I didn't know existed. The car is nearly on its last legs, and the Social Security benefits are still tied up in a claim process that my attorney says is moving along. The open country at this time of year has a rough kind of beauty. The yellow wildflowers still insist on blooming in the cold, and at night the wind sounds like someone praying softly between the twisted branches. I often sit on the front porch with a black cup of coffee and stare at that horizon like someone waiting for an answer that never comes. The answer comes, just not the way I expect. On Wednesday of the first week, while I'm hanging Eleanor's blanket on the clothesline to air out, an old leather bag falls from a fold in the fabric. I open it to put it away. Inside, a broken rosary, a faded photo of a child, a few loose coins, and a yellowed envelope stamped with the seal of a notary office in the city. I shouldn't open it, but the name on the return address stops me cold. Mr. Arthur Whitfield, Estate Planning Associates. Arthur Whitfield is the same name signed across 3 pages of Harold's estate documents. The man who, according to my attorney, fast-tracked the transfer of the farm's land to a third party before Harold's death had even been officially recorded. My hands tremble. I fold the envelope. I put it back in the bag. And I spend the entire night without sleeping, staring at the ceiling, while Eleanor sleeps in the next room, with a breathing too peaceful for someone who was found half dead on a frost-covered road. I'm not the kind of woman who acts on impulse, and that is both my strength and my trap. I worked as a detective with the county sheriff's department for 14 years. Then I resigned after a case I'd solved was buried under pressure from a powerful family, and ever since I've carried a deep skepticism about human justice. I don't believe things resolve themselves. I don't believe in coincidences. And that is precisely why, When I see Arthur Whitfield's name in Eleanor's bag, my first reaction is not hope. It's suspicion of my own mind. Maybe I'm seeing what I want to see, but the former detective I still am cannot let it go. With care, and without revealing anything to Eleanor, I begin to observe. Discipline that doesn't bend even when I want to give up. Skepticism that protects me from illusions, but also isolates me from the world. And a fierce loyalty to whoever I decide to protect, even when the cost is too high. The internal conflict tearing at me is exactly this. I want to believe that Eleanor fell on that road by chance, that it was simply an act of kindness, that there is no connection. But every detail I uncover screams the opposite, and accepting that means admitting that my goodness may have been manipulated from the very beginning. By the end of the first week, Eleanor seemed strong enough to talk. I prepare chicken and dumplings, a dish my mother used to make on cold days, with that hearty smell that sticks in memory. And the two of us eat in silence before I, with all the calm I learned to use in interrogations, ask, "Do you know a man named Arthur Whitfield?" Eleanor's fork stops in the air for half a second, then it continues. "I've heard that name, yes," she says, without looking at me. That half-second pause is small, almost invisible, but I carry it like a stone in my chest for the rest of the day. That same night, I call Raymond, my cousin who still works at the county deed registry office in the city. I ask a simple favor. Check whether any documents have been filed in the last 2 years involving the name Eleanor linked to rural properties in the state. Raymond hesitates, says he'll try, hangs up too quickly. I write everything down in a small, black-covered notebook I keep under the mattress, the same place Harold used to keep the farm's bills. In the second week, a frost more intense than usual covers the countryside for 3 days straight. The dirt roads become impassable. Eleanor and I are cut off from the outside world, and it is in this forced isolation, with the wind moaning through the barbed wire fences and the yellow wildflowers standing still like sentinels in the cold, that the two of us begin, without meaning to truly get close. Eleanor tells me in fragments that she was a rural school teacher for decades, that she never had children, that she met powerful people throughout her life, and that powerful people sometimes treat ordinary folks like disposable pieces in a game they don't even know they're playing. I listen, and in that sentence, I recognize my own story. I was exactly that, a piece thrown away by the system when I became inconvenient. Eleanor's pain is not the same as mine, but it resonates in the same deep place, that point where injustice crystallizes and becomes a quiet rage. Before I can go deeper in the conversation, the phone rings. It's Raymond, and his voice is different. Tense. "Naomi, you need to stop asking questions about that name. I'm serious. Stop right now." The call drops. I try to call back, voicemail, with Eleanor asleep and the frost tapping against the windows. I pick up Eleanor's old leather bag again and open the envelope with the care of someone disarming something dangerous. The document inside is not a standard contract. It's a power of attorney, signed by Eleanor, granting Arthur Whitfield the right to represent her in all financial matters for an indefinite period. The date, 3 months before Harold's death. I fold the paper slowly. I breathe through my nose. The smell of chicken and dumplings still lingers in the kitchen air. 3 possibilities. Either Eleanor is Arthur's victim and signed without understanding what she was signing, or Eleanor is his accomplice and is there to find out how much I know. Or there is a third option I still cannot see. The former detective in me knows that acting now would be a mistake. I need more. But the widow in me, the woman who lost the farm, lost her husband, and spent 18 months believing it was bad luck, feels for the first time that maybe it wasn't bad luck at all. In the second week, Arthur Whitfield's reach finds me through an unexpected channel. Diane, the pharmacist at the gas station, who knows everyone in town, mentions in passing that a man in a suit, rare around here, had been asking about me on a recent afternoon, asked where I lived. whether I was alone, whether I'd had anyone staying with me. I feel my skin prickle, not with fear, with recognition. I've seen this pattern before. Arthur isn't just an opportunistic attorney. He's methodical. He plans. He moves before anyone realizes the game has started. I have Eleanor. That same afternoon, I invite Eleanor for a frank conversation. I set the envelope on the table between us. I don't accuse. I ask, with the steady voice of someone who has spent years hearing lies and truths with the same expression. Did you sign this knowing what you were signing? Eleanor looks at the paper for a long time. When she answers, her voice trembles for the first time. He said it was to protect me. That I needed someone managing my affairs because I was getting older. I trusted him. That sentence opens a door that changes everything. Eleanor is not an accomplice. Eleanor is Arthur's first victim, and almost certainly not his only one. I spend the entire afternoon talking with her. Slowly, the story assembles itself like a puzzle that had been stored in different boxes. Eleanor was a rural schoolteacher in 3 different counties over 40 years. She never married, never had children. But she had saved, with the patience of someone who never asked for anything easy, 2 small pieces of property, a 5-acre plot in a neighboring county, and a small lot in a nearby town. Nothing grand, nothing that would draw attention, but enough that, at 78 years old, she had some security. Arthur had come into her life 2 years ago, referred by an acquaintance from her church. He presented himself as a specialist in the state planning for senior citizens, said he could organize everything, make sure her assets wouldn't be lost to taxes or future disputes. Eleanor, who had no close family and felt the weight of age approaching, signed the papers he brought. 3 months later, the 5-acre plot was sold. Arthur told her it was necessary to settle a tax debt Eleanor didn't even know she had. The money from the sale never reached her account. When Eleanor asked about it, Arthur produced documents, stamps, signatures, said it had all been settled properly, that she had received the money and forgotten, that it was normal at her age. Eleanor hadn't forgotten. She knew she hadn't received anything, but she didn't know how to prove it. And when she tried to seek help, she discovered that the power of attorney she had signed gave Arthur the right to represent her in any venue, including in court. She was trapped in an invisible web, without money, without recourse, without anyone who believed her. On the night I found her on the road, Eleanor had escaped from a private care facility where Arthur had had her admitted, claiming she was confused and needed supervision. The facility was 40 miles from Millbrook. She left on foot, barefoot in the cold, because she knew that if she stayed there much longer, Arthur would obtain a final medical certification declaring her incompetent, and then there would be no way back. I listened to all of this in silence. The wind beats against the windows. The countryside outside is quiet, covered by the fog drifting through the dry brush. When Eleanor finishes speaking, I sit looking at her hands, wrinkled and firm at the same time, hands of someone who worked all their life and never asked for anything free. Do you have any documents, anything that proves what you're telling me? I do, she answers softly. I have copies of everything. I kept them in a blue folder at a friend's house in the city, but I don't know if it's still there. It's been nearly a month since I escaped. I write down the address, write down the friend's name, write down every detail the way I did in the old days, when a case was taking shape and I knew every word mattered. The next morning I call Frank, a retired sheriff's detective who was my mentor on the force, and who always said his door was open. He picks up on the 3rd ring. The voice is the same as always, deep, tired, but with that steadiness that doesn't fade even after 30 years out of the field. I tell him everything. I hide nothing. I tell him about the bag, the envelope, the power of attorney, Eleanor's escape, the man in the suit asking about me at the gas station. Frank listens without interrupting. When I finish, he lets out a long sigh. Naomi, you know this isn't going to be easy. Arthur Whitfield is not just anybody. He has connections, he has money, and he has a track record of walking away clean from everything thrown at him. I know. Are you sure you want to get into this? Because if you do, you go all the way, and the end might not be pretty. I'm already in it, Frank, from the night I found her on that road. He's silent for a few seconds. Then he says, "All right, I'll see what I can do. But you need to get me those documents Eleanor mentioned. Without proof, there's no case." I hang up. I look at Eleanor, who is sitting in the rocking chair by the window, watching the countryside as if she is praying in silence. "We're going into the city tomorrow," I say, "to get the documents." She looks at me with eyes full of tears that don't fall. "Why are you doing this for me?" I don't know how to answer that properly. Maybe because I saw in Eleanor what I could have become. Maybe because stopping helping feels like giving up on believing there is still something right in this world. Maybe because after 18 months living in emptiness, helping someone is 18 months living in emptiness, helping someone is the only thing that still makes sense. Because it's the right thing to do, I answer. Just that. The next morning we leave early. The car groans around the bends in the dirt road, but it holds. The city is 60 miles away. The sky is clear, with that strong blue of open country that seems to have no end. We arrive at Eleanor's friend's house around 10 in the morning. The woman, whose name is Louise, opens the door with a frightened face. She looks at Eleanor as if she is seeing a ghost. "Good Lord, Eleanor, I thought you were dead. Everyone's been saying you disappeared, that they're looking for you." "Who's looking for her?" I ask. "A man. He came here twice, said he was Eleanor's attorney, that she was sick, that she'd escaped from a care facility. He left a card." Louise pulls the card from a drawer. "Arthur Whitfield, Estate Planning Associates." He asked if I knew where she was. I said I didn't. He asked if she had left anything here. I said no to that too. "Indeed, and the blue folder?" Eleanor asks, her voice trembling. Louise hesitates. She looks at me. She looks at Eleanor. Then to the bedroom and comes back with a blue plastic folder, thick with papers. "It's all here." I hid it under the mattress when he came. Eleanor takes the folder with both hands, like someone holding something sacred. She opens it. Inside, copies of contracts, receipts, bank statements, printed emails, everything organized, everything dated, everything signed. I flip through the documents right there, standing in Louise's living room. The pieces fall into place: the sale of the property, the transfer of money to an account that is not Eleanor's, the forged signature on 3 receipts, and worst of all, a series of medical reports declaring Eleanor to be showing signs of senile dementia, all signed by the same physician, all issued in the same week. Eleanor had never seen that doctor in her life. "This is forgery," I say, holding the papers. "This is a federal crime." Louise has gone pale. "You need to leave. If he finds out I gave this to you, he'll come after me." "He won't find out," I say, tucking the folder under my arm. "And if he does come, you say everything, that Eleanor took everything without you seeing." We leave quickly. The drive back to Millbrook is tense. I keep checking the rearview mirror the whole way, expecting to see a car following us. But the road is empty. By the time we get home, it's late. The sun is setting, painting the open land in orange and red. I put the blue folder in the same place I keep the black-covered notebook, under the mattress. Eleanor is exhausted. I help her lie down. I make a cup of chamomile tea. When I return to the room, she is asleep, breathing with the calm of someone who finally felt safe after a very long time. I sit alone in the living room, with the blue folder open in my lap. I read every page. I note every detail, every name, every date, every signature. Arthur Whitfield built a system. He doesn't act alone. He has a doctor who signs false reports. He has an accountant who organizes the transfers. He has contacts inside the deed registry offices. and he almost certainly has other victims who never had the courage or the means to come forward. I close the folder. I breathe deeply. The smell of the countryside drifts through the open window, mixed with the sound of crickets and the wind that never stops. I know that from here on, things are going to get dangerous. I know Arthur won't let this go. And I know that confronting him means putting not just myself but Eleanor at risk as well. But I also know one thing. I've spent 18 months carrying the weight of an injustice I could never prove. Now, for the first time, I have in my hands the chance to prove it wasn't bad luck. It wasn't an accident. It was a crime. And this time, I am not giving up. On Thursday of the second week, I make a mistake that nearly costs everything. I confront Wesley, the accountant who worked with Harold and whose name appears in the copies of documents I traced in the blue folder. I find him in the parking lot of his office in downtown Millbrook and show him the pages where his signature appears alongside suspicious bank transfers. Wesley goes white. His hands tremble as he takes the papers. He mumbles something about not knowing anything, about just following orders, about being sorry. But before I can pull anything useful out of him, he gets in his car and speeds away. I drive home thinking I at least managed to rattle him. I don't realize I've just lit a giant red flare for Arthur. A few hours later, a car pulls up in front of my house. It doesn't do anything. It just stops. It sits there for 5 minutes. Then it leaves. This is the longest night of the story. I turn off the lights. I sit in the dark with Eleanor beside me. For the first time in all of this, I cry. Not out of fear, but out of exhaustion. Out of having carried so much alone for so long. Out of feeling the weight of every choice I've made since I found Eleanor on that road. Eleanor places her hand over mine, wrinkled and firm, and says nothing. Sometimes the right silence carries more weight than any word. I stay awake until dawn, with the blue folder in my lap and the black-covered notebook open on the table. I write down everything that happened. I write down the time the car stopped. I write down the license plate, which I'd managed to memorize by the reflection of the streetlight. I write down the make and model. I write down everything. Because I know that if something happens to me, someone needs to know. The next morning, with the open country beginning to warm in the coming of spring and the first pink wildflowers appearing at the edges of the road, I receive a call from an unknown number. I answer. The voice on the other end is female, young, nervous. Is this Naomi? It is. My name is Brittany. I worked for Arthur Whitfield until 2 years ago. Someone gave me your number. My name is Brittany. I worked for Arthur Whitfield until 2 years ago. Someone gave me your number. They told me you're investigating him. I feel my heart speed up. I have documents. A lot of documents. I kept everything when he fired me without cause. I always knew someday it would matter. We arranged to meet that same day at a small diner in a town between Millbrook and the city, far from any familiar eyes. Brittany is 29 years old, with short hair and deep-set eyes that haven't slept right in a long time. She arrives with a black backpack and sits down across from me like someone about to jump off a ledge. I worked 3 years as Arthur's legal secretary, she starts. At first I thought it was a normal job, contracts, powers of attorney, estate work. But little by little, I began to notice something was wrong. Clients signing papers they didn't understand, transfers that didn't add up, elderly people who disappeared from one day to the next. She opens the backpack and pulls out a thick folder full of documents, flash drives, handwritten notes. When he fired me, I took everything. I copied everything that was on his computer, emails, spreadsheets, original contracts, everything. I take the folder, I flip through it. There are hundreds of pages, names I don't recognize, properties scattered across the entire state, false powers of attorney, medical reports identical to those I saw in Eleanor's folder, all signed by the same physician. How many victims, I ask? At least 12 that I was able to identify, but I think there are more. I feel my stomach turn. 12 people, 12 lives destroyed, 12 families who lost everything without understanding how. Why did you never come forward? Brittany lowers her head. Because I was afraid. Arthur has connections. He knows judges, prosecutors, law enforcement, and he made it very clear the day he fired me that if I opened my mouth, he would ruin me. He'd claim I stole money from him. He'd sue me. He'd destroy me. And why speak now? She looks at me with eyes full of tears. Because my grandmother died 3 months ago. She had a house, a simple house, one she bought with retirement savings over 20 years. 2 weeks before she died, she signed a power of attorney for an attorney who showed up at her door saying he would help regularize the paperwork. When she died, the house was already in someone else's name. My mother tried to contest it. She couldn't. The attorney was a business partner of Arthur's. The silence between us is heavy. Brittany wipes her tears with the back of her hand. I couldn't save my grandmother, but maybe I can help save other people. I take the folder. I squeeze Brittany's hand. You just saved a lot of people. I drive home with Brittany's folder on the passenger seat and my heart beating at a rhythm I hadn't felt in a long time. It isn't hope exactly. It's something close to it, something that feels like the sense that, for the first time in 18 months, the pieces are finally falling into place on the right side. When I arrive, Eleanor is in the kitchen making cornbread. The smell fills the entire house. She looks at me and smiles. Did you get what you needed? I did. More than I expected. That night, I call Frank. I tell him about Brittany, about the documents, about the 12 victims, about the doctor who signs false reports, about the accountant, about the entire network Arthur had built over the years. Frank listens to everything. When I finish, he says, I'm going to call the district attorney's office first thing tomorrow morning. With what you have, we can build a solid case. But Naomi, you need to understand something. Arthur is going to know it was you, and he's going to react. I know. And do you have a way to protect yourself? I look at the small brick house, at the empty road outside, at Eleanor on the other side of the wall, humming softly while she washes the dishes. I do, I lie. Frank sighs. Stay sharp. If anything happens, you call me. Any hour. Understood? Understood. I hang up. I sit alone in the living room, lights off, listening to the sound of the wind against the windows. The countryside at night has a silence that isn't really silence. It's full of small sounds, crickets, dry leaves dragged across the ground, animals moving through the brush. Harold always said the open land never truly sleeps. It only pretends. On Friday, Frank calls back. The voice is different. Son. I spoke with the prosecutor. She wants to see the documents. She wants to hear from Eleanor. And she wants to put together an operation. But there's a problem. Arthur has a preventive restraining order in progress. If we move now and he finds out before the operation is assembled, he disappears and then we lose everything. How much time do we have? A week, maybe 2. Depends on how fast the prosecutor can organize everything. And what do I do until then? Stay quiet. Don't talk to anyone else. Don't confront anyone else. And hope that Wesley didn't tell Arthur what you did, but it's already too late for that. That same night, the car comes back. This time, it stops and stays. Not for 5 minutes. For an hour. Lights off. Engine off. Just sitting there, like a warning. Eleanor comes into the living room. She looks out the window and goes pale. He knows I'm here. Arthur. Or someone who works for him. I pick up the phone. I call Frank. He answers on the first ring. There's a car parked in front of my house, and it's been there for an hour. Write down the plate number. Take a photo if you can, but don't go outside. Don't open the door. Don't do anything. What if they come in? They're not going to come in. They just want to scare you. It's working. Frank doesn't laugh. Hold on, Naomi. Not much longer now. The car leaves half an hour later, but the message has been delivered. On Saturday, an unexpected storm falls over the countryside. It isn't the rainy season, but the sky darkens suddenly, and a violent downpour crashes down with thunder that shakes the whole house. The dirt roads turn into rivers of red mud. The power goes out. Eleanor and I sit in the dark, listening to the water hammer the roof as if the sky itself is caving in. And it is in that moment, in the middle of the storm, that Eleanor says, "If something happens to me, I want you to know that I don't regret having escaped. I regret not having escaped sooner. Nothing is going to happen to you." You can't promise that. She's right. I can't. The storm passes. The countryside fills with that smell of wet earth that cleans everything. And on Monday, Frank calls. "It's ready. The operation is happening Thursday morning. The prosecutor wants you and Eleanor to stay somewhere safe until then." "Where?" "There's a property belonging to a friend of mine about 20 miles from here. Isolated, secure. You'll stay there until Thursday. Then we settle the rest." I pack our things. I take the blue folder. I take Brittany's documents. I take the black-covered notebook. And on Tuesday morning, I leave the house with Eleanor in the passenger seat, leaving behind the small brick house that has been my entire life. The countryside is in bloom now. The pink and yellow wildflowers burst with color against the blue sky. Spring has arrived, and with it, the feeling that something is truly about to change. On Thursday morning, Arthur Whitfield is taken into custody in a quiet operation, coordinated by Frank, together with the district attorney's office. The evidence is solid. Eleanor's fraudulent power of attorney, Brittany's documents, the tracking of the transfers that Raymond, after over 12 victims, everything organized, dated, certified. Frank calls me at 9 in the morning. The voice is tired but carries a tone of contained victory. "We got him. He's at the station right now." I close my eyes, porch of the safe house, watching the horizon as if she has been waiting for this news her entire life. And now we wait. He'll try to get out. He'll post bail. He'll activate his contacts. But this time, the evidence is too strong, and the prosecutor is willing to go all the way. I hang up. I look at Eleanor. "They arrested him?" She doesn't smile. She simply closes her eyes and murmurs something that sounds like a prayer. But the victory doesn't last. 8 hours later, Arthur is free, bail posted, smile on his face. He walks out of the station and posts a video to social media in a pressed suit, saying he was a victim of persecution, that he will sue everyone involved for wrongful prosecution, that truth always prevails. I watch the video on my phone. I feel the anger rise up in my throat. I close the phone hard. Eleanor is beside me. She places her hand on my shoulder. "You knew this was going to happen, didn't you?" "I did. And you still did all of this. Why?" I take a long time to answer. I look out at the countryside, the wildflowers still in bloom, the enormous sky, the red earth that never changes. Because even when we know the system is going to fail, we still have to try. Because if we don't try, they win twice. They win because they go unpunished. And they win because we give up believing there is still something right in the world. Eleanor squeezes my hand. She says nothing, but she understands. What Arthur doesn't know yet is that among the documents Brittany kept there is a series of falsified medical reports he used to temporarily declare Eleanor incompetent and expedite the power of attorney. Falsification of medical records, a federal crime, a different prosecutor, a process that does not depend on the same judge who released his falsification of medical records. A federal crime, a different jurisdiction, a different prosecutor, a process that does not depend on the same judge who released his bail. Frank explains this to me on Friday, after we return to Millbrook. The federal prosecutor is already building the case. It will take longer. It will move slower. But there is no way he escapes this one. Falsifying medical records doesn't expire easily, and the penalty is heavy. How long? Months, maybe a year before the trial, but he will answer for it. And in the meantime, he stays free, but watched. And you stay clear of him. I go home with Eleanor. The small brick house is the way we left it. Quiet, clean, with the smell of cornbread still in the air. The countryside outside is different now. Spring has brought new life. The birds have returned. The light afternoon rain wets the earth and makes the grass grow green between the stones. Eleanor resumes the legal process to annul the power of attorney and recover the assets that were wrongfully transferred. Frank refers a trusted attorney, someone who has handled cases like this for years and isn't afraid to go up against people like Arthur. The process is slow, bureaucratic, full of back and forth. But for the first time, Eleanor has someone in her corner, and that makes all the difference. Meanwhile, life returns to something that feels almost normal. Eleanor stays with me, not out of necessity but by choice. She says that after spending weeks alone, running, afraid, with nowhere to go, the idea of going back to an empty house is unbearable. I understand, because I felt the same in the 18 months after Harold's death. Loneliness isn't the absence of people, it's the absence of meaning. We plant an apple sapling in the backyard. It's a small tradition around here. Whoever plants a young fruit tree plants for others, because the tree takes years to bear fruit. It's a gesture from someone who believes there will be a future, even without knowing exactly what it will look like. Eleanor places the sapling in the ground with her own hands. She waters it, she pats the earth around it, and she stays there on her knees, looking at that fragile little plant as if she is looking at her own life being born again. 3 weeks after Arthur's arrest, news reaches me in an unexpected way. Diane, the pharmacist at the gas station, mentions in passing that Arthur is ill, that he was rushed to a hospital in the city, that doctors are investigating a degenerative neurological condition. I stay quiet. I don't know what to feel. Days later, Frank confirms the symptoms Arthur is showing are real, and they correspond exactly to the neurological condition he fabricated in the false medical reports to have Eleanor declared incompetent. The doctors say it's coincidence, that the illness had been dormant for years. That stress accelerated everything. I don't celebrate. I just look out at the countryside through the window, the pink and yellow wildflowers mixed together now in the warmth of spring, and feel something that is not joy, but is close to peace. The following month, a letter arrives from Harold's estate proceedings. The case has been reopened on the basis of new evidence that surfaced during the investigation into Arthur. It could take another year. It could amount to nothing, but it is open. I fold the letter, I place it in the black-covered notebook, and I go to the kitchen to make coffee. Eleanor is on the porch, sitting in Harold's rocking chair, watching the countryside with the serene look of someone who has finally found a place to rest. I bring out 2 cups of coffee. I sit beside her. We stay there in silence, listening to the wind that never stops, the bird song, the distant sound of a car passing on the dirt road. "Do you regret it?" Eleanor asks suddenly. "Regret what?" "Stopping that night, taking me home, getting involved in all of this." I think about the answer. I think about everything that happened, the sleepless nights, the fear, the exhaustion, the car parked in front of the house, the storm, the tears, the weight of carrying everything alone. And I also think about the blue folder, about Brittany's documents, about the 12 victims who now have a chance to recover what they lost, about the federal case moving forward, about the annulled power of attorney, about the apple sapling growing in the backyard. No, I answer. I don't regret it. Why? Because if I had driven straight past that night, you would have died on the road, and Arthur would have kept doing what he was doing, and I would have kept living in the emptiness, believing what happened to me was just bad luck, and none of this would have changed. Eleanor smiles. It's a small smile, but a real one. You know what I've learned over all these years? She says. The world is full of bad people, but it's also full of people like you, people who stop when everyone else drives past, people who help even when it costs them dearly, people who still believe it's worth trying. And do you think it is? I do. Because if it isn't, what's left? We stay there until the sun starts to set, painting the open country in orange and red. The sky stretches wide, the way it only does in the countryside, without buildings or lights or anything to interrupt the immensity. The following week, Brittany calls me. Her voice is different, lighter. Naomi, I did it. My mother was able to reverse the sale of my grandmother's house. The attorney who drew up the fraudulent power of attorney is under investigation, and the house has been returned to the family. That's wonderful, Brittany. I'm so happy for you. I wanted to thank you, because if you hadn't started all of this, none of it would have happened. You played your part too. Without the documents you kept, none of this would have been possible. She's quiet for a few seconds. Then she says, sometimes you hold on to things waiting for the right moment to use them. And the right moment only comes when you find the right person. I hang up. I look at Eleanor, who is in the kitchen making cornbread again. The smell takes over the entire house, and I realize she's right. Sometimes you just need to find the right person, or be found by them. 3 months after the start of this story, I receive a call from Frank. The federal case against